This is Arts Weekly. Arts Weekly is presented by the College of Visual and Performing Arts at IPFW, offering degrees in fine arts, music, theater, and visual communication and design. IPFW, the energy of the arts.
Welcome to this edition of Arts Weekly. On this week's program, we'll give you lots of reasons to return to campus. I'm Melinda Haines with the IPFW College of Visual and Performing Arts. In the second half of the show, we'll be joined by Dr. Robert Bean, who will give us the highlights of the IPFW Department of Music's fall season. But first, we'll learn about the IPFW Department of Theater's production of The Women of Lockerbie with Jeff Casazza. Thank you for being on Arts Weekly, Jeff.
Thank you, Melinda, for having us.
That's going to be fun to learn about this show, which is not exactly a fun topic, but can you tell us a little bit about the Women of Lockerbie, and because it's based on a true story?
It is. It's based on the PanAm terrorist attack from 1998 or 1988. And yeah, it has that tragic element to it, but it's also an uplifting play. So even though it's dealing with the disaster and the tragedy that happens, it also deals with how do we get over that, and how do we move beyond, not move on, but how do we move beyond something tragic that happens in our lives.
So it's kind of you get to learn a little bit of just about the suffering, but what happens after.
Right, and it's a very beautiful play.
Yeah. When was it written?
It was written about 15 years ago. She started working on it after seeing the Nightline anniversary special of the PanAm tragedy, and thought it was a fascinating thing to explore, and decided to write this play about it, and then continued to write it, and then it was finally published in 2005.
So when does the story take place, in relation to the crash?
It takes place 7 years of the 7th anniversary of the PanAm crash. So a mother and father of one of the children who was killed in the plane crash or the explosion come to Lockerbie looking for their son. Looking for any vestiges. It turns out that the bomb that the terrorist had placed on the plane was under their son's seat. So there's no body, there's nothing. He was obliterated. And so they're trying to deal with the loss of their son when they have nothing of him. So they've come to Scotland, to Lockerbie, to the place where it happened, to find some remnant of their son, whatever that means to them.
So is this play based all on truth? Is any of it fictionalized at all, or is it the story of this family and some others?
Yeah, it's based on the true story of what happened in Scotland, and it's on the 7th anniversary this family comes, and so the American family that comes looking for some kind of closure, but that's simplifying it. As they're coming to look for these remnants, they are representative of all of the victims' families from the people on the plane.
So are the other characters in the show then representative of these other families of the people on the plane?
The people in Scotland are representative of all the people in Lockerbie, because the tragedy affected them as much as it did the people in the plane, because the plane actually landed on some people's houses. So a number of Scottish people were killed, as well as the people who were involved in the plane.
So as the plot progresses, what happens when this family comes to Lockerbie?
Well, they meet the women of Lockerbie, and through the course of the play, they learn that the women are wanting to take all of the clothes that were in the suitcases and that the victims were wearing, all of them, and they're certainly bloody, and they've had fuel contamination, and they're wanting to take these clothes and wash them to kind of cleanse not only themselves, but cleanse all of the tragedy away from it. And then they want to return these clothes to the victims' families as a way of maybe giving them that sense of closure, or at least here's something of your family member that
some memorial.
Yeah, a memorial of that. And that is actually all true. The Women of Lockerbie worked for a number of years to get the clothes in order to wash them, because they needed to cleanse themselves as well. They needed to find hope. They needed to find a way to move beyond this as well. And they were able to do that. A lot of the events that happen in the play are fictionalized, leading to that same end result.
Why was it so difficult for them to wash the clothes? Why were they not allowed to do that?
Well, in the play, this is where some of the kind of Greek tragic elements come in, of who is the authority figure that is not letting something happen, or is who controlling it. And so in this version, the American government is prohibiting them from doing that because it's evidence in the terrorist act, and so they can't release anything. And then once this is when the case is going to be closed. So it has that sense of urgency that we need to take care of this right now, and the American government is going to burn them. So as opposed to because they are contaminated. I mean, there's blood and guts all over. That we don't ever see that.
Right. But the Women of Lockerbie are trying to
intervene
to get them.
To get them. Yes, and that is all true.
The
not the fight with the American government, but the fight to get the clothes.
Fight to get the clothes. Yes. The actual night of the PanAm crash was pretty symbolic. I mean,
I mean, it's interesting because it happened on December 21st, which is the longest night of the year. And so there are I know there are a lot of celebrations or a lot of religious ceremonies on that night because people who are dealing with loss on that night, it's the hardest because the night is so long. And they deal with that in Lockerbie as well because they celebrate the winter solstice as now the days are going to get longer. So they are welcoming the sun. So the people of Lockerbie have a wonderful celebration on the 21st where they stay up all night and party. It's a happy celebration. And they're celebrating this, and then they stay up till dawn and they welcome the sun happening. And so they're having a celebration in Lockerbie when this plane crashes into their homes, their farms, their fields. I mean, the wreckage is just vast on what happened in Scotland. And so it destroyed their lives as well as the families of the victims.
This is a very contemporary play. So you mentioned earlier about the Greek tragedy elements of it. How does that sort of soften or make the sadness of this play
kind of go away?
Yeah.
Well, and that's interesting. The playwright, Deborah Brevoort, she was fascinated by this story. And she wanted to find a way to tell it that isn't relentless. So if she wrote it in a more contemporary way, this tragedy would just beat down on the audience. But by taking a Greek tragic structure and creating the play it allows the audience to breathe and find that moment of, here's an episode where we see some awful thing happen or there's a fight or something happens. And then there's a choral dialogue which allows us to take a step back and look at what just happened. And then if we need another step back, we can have this poetry, this ode, as the Greeks called them. So there's an episode, a choral dialogue, and an ode, which then kind of washes the themes of the play over the audience in a very beautiful way. As things are happening with the play. And so she did that structure to kind of allow the audience to back away from the tragedy.
And you had the privilege of having the playwright
here.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, she was interested in coming to us, and we were able to fit it into our schedule and fit it into her schedule. And she gave us a couple of options, and we chose the one where she would be able to come to our first rehearsal. Because we thought that would be a great step for the cast to be able to actually meet the playwright, work with her a little bit, ask her questions. And it was a wonderful 3-hour session with her, with our cast. And I actually got to have dinner with her and have lunch, and we were able to continue talking about the play as well.
So as the director then, speaking with the playwright, do you think that maybe brought a little different sense to how you were directing it? Did you learn more about it?
It's very interesting. I had a lot of ideas of how I wanted to approach this, how I was going to approach the language, how a lot of different things were going to happen. And what she said in all of our meetings to the cast just amplified what I was already doing. So I felt, that was exciting because I knew that I was on the right track to produce her play in the way that she wanted it presented.
Now, when did your rehearsal start?
Well, we started about a month ago, and we started in the middle of the Miser, right at the end of the Miser.
But before even your rehearsals with the cast start, you have a lot of designing process.
Yes,
and I know
we do.
This show has student designers, costume designers.
Yes, all of the costume designs were designed by a student.
Tell us a little about that. I just think that's fascinating and wonderful.
In the department, we're in the process right now of selecting next year's season. We're just starting that, so it starts almost a year out. And then once the plays are selected, the directors start thinking about them, what's going to happen. And then about 3 to 4 months before the show goes into rehearsal, we're starting our design meetings. So we started these back in September and really even started talking in August on kind of individual basis. But our
there's
meetings,
some very talented student designers.
Oh,
Those
absolutely.
Costumes are,
yeah,
are
the costumes
wonderful.
are great. Jessica Sokolowski is the student who is working on our show.
Yeah, it's just neat to see that come to life. See from the, just the drawings that she makes, and
Oh,
then
absolutely.
to see how they come to life on the stage. And you have students and non-traditional students.
All of the cast are students. They're IPFW Department of Theater students. Our auditions are open to everyone, so anyone can audition. But in casting this, if we can find a way to have all the roles done by students, that's great. And it was a wonderful thing with all of our students auditioning. So our auditions are always open. So Oliver is coming up, and we have a mix of students and community members who are in that, as well as children. There'll be a lot of children in that.
Lots of children.
So it'll be a huge cast, and that will involve a lot of different organizations to do that.
Well, for a second, I just want to go back to the show, because the PanAm officials in real life, they were not always the easiest to work with. In the and is that reflected in the show?
Not really. Only in the fact that what they're doing was kind of underhanded, what they did with some of the victims' families. And there's a little bit of that you have this authority figure, and that's what usually happens in these Greek tragedies, like Creon says you can't bury these people, and then the tragedy comes as a result of some decree or something that happens in the actual Greek play. And so I think, yes, there were some errors that PanAm did that could be sort of clumped into that authority figure.
Right.
Certainly all of the authority figures are kind of lumped into this one American government official.
Okay.
And so in some small way, yes, it's probably true that they could be put into that one character.
Now, the show opens when?
It opens next Friday, so November 9th.
November 9th.
And runs for 2 weeks.
2 weeks, and people can get tickets?
Yes, you can get tickets a lot of different ways. You can go online, so you can get them through the College of Visual and Performing Arts box office, going there. You can also go to the Larson box office or call the Larson box office. On the evening of the show, you can also buy them in person there.
Terrific. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are looking forward to seeing the Women of Lockerbie. As we get ready to meet our next guest, please take a minute to view our performance calendar of what's coming up in our area, and keep in mind that you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We'll be right back with Dr. Robert Bean from the IPFW Department of Music.